Okay. So, hello, good evening. I'm particularly welcome if this is your first time at the Buddhist Centre on a Sangha Night. What happens on a Sangha Night is there's a talk, then there's groups, tea break, and then meditation. And we're partway through a series where we're looking at the wheel, the spiral, and the goal. So what we're looking at is this image, I hope you can see over there projected, which is from a Wheel of Life. And actually, that's a Wheel of Life that I particularly like because you might not be able to see it from where you are, but you might be able to have a look later. There's all sorts of wonderful kind of domestic kind of details from the life of monks, I think. Like there's monks' robes hanging up to dry, and there's a whole load of sandals, including what looks like flip-flops as well, just kind of like on the outside of the wheel. But basically this is an image that goes back to Buddhism in India, and then became particularly used in Tibet. And it's, I suppose, an amazing teaching aid. It's very rich, a very rich description, a lot can come out of it. It's also a mirror. It's a mirror where we can see our own lives reflected, and we can help ourselves to break out. What it is the depiction of a cycle that we can get caught in. We can get caught in a cycle of going round and round, doing the same things, creating the same world for ourselves. This is an image which shows how we can actually find a way to break out of that by waking up to the fact we're going around and looking to behave in different ways. So what we're looking at today is part of this image, which is known as the realms. So on this image there are 6 realms, and I will use the stick. Bodhinaga's given me his stick from last week. So this is great, I've never got to do this. Okay, so so here we have these very serious realms here. And what there is at the top there's the heavenly realm, or the realm of the gods. And that's not meaning God in that kind of way, the Christian God, the creator God. It's meaning a place where the gods live. So it's a life full of pleasure, great enjoyment, great happiness, great bliss. Then we have next to it what's known as the realm of the Asura, or Titan, or anti-God. We're going to be talking about that today. And that's where it's a very competitive, very warlike place to be. Then we've got a realm which is known as the hungry ghosts, or the pretas. That's about craving. There's a realm called hell, which is intense suffering. There's a realm of animals, and that's the realm which is about food, comfort, sex, those kind of animal side of our being. And then there's a human realm. The human realm is really important because it's in the human realm that we can break out of this circle, that we can get out. And what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is exploring these in more detail. Actually, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be exploring these in more detail. And today, me and Maitridasa and Sanghagita are going to be talking about 3 of the realms in particular. We've got the dark realms. So we've got the Asura, the hungry ghost, and the hell realms we're going to be talking about today. But first of all, I'll just tell a little story that kind of illustrates those realms, I hope. So, it's a story that I have taken from this marvellous book, which is called The Wheel of Life by Kulananda, which I'd really recommend if you're intrigued by the Wheel of Life and want to read more about it. So, he talks about a story. So, basically, these realms, you could see them as being places, or you could see them as being psychological states. I think in traditional Tibetan Buddhism, they'd actually be seen as places you'd be reborn into in different lives. But we can probably see that those different states I've described, you could go through them in one day, you could go through them in an hour, even in a few minutes. There'll be people in Sheffield right now in all of those states. So the little story is about someone called Joanna, and she lives in Sheffield. And one lunchtime she goes to a beautiful concert at the City Hall. She loves classical music, and there's some Bach, and it's just really works for her. She finds herself in this wonderful frame of mind, a bit like if you're meditating and you go into a very peaceful, calm, beautiful state of mind. So that's the God realm. Everything is beautiful. And she comes out and she goes, oh, that was so amazing. I wish I could recreate that. So she thinks, I'll go to John Lewis's and I'll have a look at their kind of hi-fi systems. Because if I got myself a really great hi-fi, I might be able to recreate that musical experience. So she goes up to whatever floor it is, the second floor, I happen to know. And this is a true story. And she sees this amazing hi-fi equipment, you know, like really beautiful. She could have it all through the house, different sounds, you know, these amazing speakers. You know, but it's going to cost quite a lot, you know, I don't know, thousands of pounds to be able to have this. She thinks, but if only I had this hi-fi system in my house, well, I'd just be happy forevermore. You know, that would be it. I would be sorted out, you know. It would be great. And she really craves it. That's the hungry ghost. So that's looking for something to fill up those holes. But then she starts to think, oh, okay, if I'm going to get this hi-fi system, it's going to cost me money. And actually, I've spent quite a lot of money. I've just been on holiday with my partner, John, and we've spent quite a lot of money, so I haven't got much money at the moment. But I've got an idea, actually. There's a promotion going at work, and if I said to the boss, well, my colleague Jackie is going for the promotion, if I told my boss about Jackie and what she was really like, I'd get the promotion, then I'd get more money, and then I could buy the hi-fi system. So that bit where she's thinking, if I could just, you know, if I could manipulate it so that I get the promotion, that is the asuras, or the anti-gods, they're called, the Titan realm. Anyway, so she's kind of got a bit tired by all this scheming. She goes home and she's just really hungry, so she has some food to eat from the fridge, sits down, watches a bit of telly, just kind of gets herself in quite an animal realm, which is about food, about just kind of vegging out, about comfort. Suddenly the phone rings. She wakes up, she goes, oh, what have I been doing, just vegging out? I could have been writing that novel that I'm working on. I could have been listening to some great music. What have I been doing? And she's been in the human realm. For a little bit there, she's in the human realm. She's kind of aware of what's going on, and she's making kind of conscious decisions about what she could do. Anyway, on the phone is John. And John is in a bit of a bad state. He's had enough of their relationship, and he wants to end the relationship. And he says the thing about her is she's so selfish. All she thinks about is music and writing her novel. And actually, John's been seeing quite a lot of Jackie from and they just seem to understand each other so much better. He's getting on much better with her. And that's it with the relationship. So poor old Joanna just sinks right down into the hells, basically, into suffering of a lot of pain, grief, and jealousy as well. So I hope that gives you a sense of those different realms. Okay, each of those realms, there's actually a Buddha figure. I'm not sure if it is on that picture. Actually, we have the next picture. I think that one's got. No. Oh, go back to the beginning. Great. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that more clearly, but basically this goes through the different realms, and in each of these there's like a little Buddha who's teaching, and each of those Buddhas is kind of an aspect of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva of compassion, and each of those Buddha figures gives the beings in that realm what they need to get out of that realm, and we'll be talking about that. So let's have a look at the Asura, or Titan, or anti-god realm. So this is a traditional image from the Wheel of Life, and what's going on here is a lot of warfare. Because basically what the Titans do, these Asuras do, is they battle the gods and they battle each other. So they're a very warlike, very kind of armoured place to be. They're very competitive. They're at war with each other, they're at war with the gods. They form temporary strategic alliances, but then they let go of those when something better comes along. There's no love, there's no gentleness in this realm. And what they're doing actually is they're fighting the gods for the possession of what's called the wish-granting tree. And the wish-granting tree is in the gods' realm, and it gives you whatever you want. So they want to acquire the delight of the gods. Now the gods have got that by performing skillful actions over many years. You know, they've actually kind of earned it in a way. The Asuras don't want to be bothered with that. They just want to get what they want now, by whatever means, basically. So they just want to get that. It's very much a hierarchical society, place to be. Everybody knows their place in the hierarchy. Everybody wants to be at the top of the hierarchy. There's no idea of cooperation. Yeah. And interestingly, it's quite a kind of, the difference between the genders, between men and women, are very strong in that realm. So men are men, proper men, muscle-bound, and women are very feminine. Yeah. Let's have the next slide. I can't remember what that is actually. Oh, okay. So, those like pointed out to me actually that Sanghagita said the orcs from the Lord of the Rings are a really good example of orcs, of titans. They're very warlike creatures. You know, their pleasure is had in fighting each other. Okay, with the next one. Okay, so that says survival of the fittest. Okay, and I think that is from an image from a computer game, which I don't know, I've never played it. But I thought it was very important because I thought actually the ethos in our society can often be very much the one of the asuras, the titans. It's even seen as that's kind of almost like the natural way to be. And I think there's been a real misinterpretation of Darwinism, which is the idea, you know, that those groups of beings that can adapt most to the situation they're in will survive. It's actually been gone out into our society as if it's about the survival of the fittest, the nastiest, that's who survives. So there's like a real misunderstanding of what Darwin said, and it's become a common thing in our society that you've got to be the meanest, the most vicious in order to get on. That's the really important thing to be. So I think that image is quite interesting because there's like, you know, really strong people fighting. It's basically like, from what I know of computer games, many of them are basically about you fight each other. That's the whole point of them, you know. Okay, let's have the next one. Okay. So this is the leader of one of the countries in the world, one of the most powerful countries in the world, Putin. And I think he's kind of rocking that archetype quite well, really, there. I mean, it is, you know, that is the place of politics, isn't it? It's like, you know, we make alliances, then we break them, we want power. That's the most important thing. Okay, so if we find ourselves living there, we might find ourselves perhaps at work, living in that situation, finding ourselves, what do we do? Well, I think for me the first thing is that the Buddha who comes into that realm is a Buddha with a sword, a green Buddha with a sword. And it's a sword of wisdom. And it's also a very powerful sword. So actually what asuras need is they're very, very powerful, they're into power, they need to be met with power as well. But the sword is a sword of wisdom where we cut through to what's going on underneath. So I suppose if we're in that situation, it's like we really want something. If we find ourselves being very competitive, very manipulative, it's like we really want something. And I suppose we need to look beneath that and to see what is it we really want. Because it probably isn't actually that position of status. And there's an idea that Sanghagita, who's the founder of this movement, has, which I find really useful, is he talks about two modes that we can be in the world. One is the power mode and one is the love mode. And the asuras are definitely working in the power mode. So power is where you use strength to get what you want. You use whatever power you've got, whatever rank you've got to get what you want. Love mode is where you're working for the benefit of other people and for yourself. So I suppose when I find myself in this mode of being a titan and asura, a big question to ask myself is, am I in the power mode right now, or am I in the love mode? And if I'm in the power mode, to look at that and then move, if I can, into the love mode. Okay. Do you want the stick?
I don't want the stick.
I think it's quite a kind of a power mode thing to have.
Okay, so the next realm is the Hungry Ghost realm, and it's a pretty grim realm. Just so, traditionally in the images, it's a very bleak, dry, arid environment. You've sometimes got a river. But the river is it's really sort of thick, black, polluted, undrinkable water. There's very little foliage, so there's very little shelter from heat or the cold winds. And there's hardly any food, actually. Maybe just a few tall trees with tiny fruits which are too high to actually reach. Next picture, please. Okay, and in this realm live beings called hungry ghosts or pretas. Hungry ghosts, they're really pitiful creatures. They're said to be the colour of smoke. They're naked and they've got deformed bodies. They've got very spindly arms and legs and a huge, bloated, sagging belly. Can't really tell on this one. Let's see if it's on the next one. Yeah, so they've got these long, constricted necks, and then their mouths are said to be just the size of the eye of a needle, just like a pinprick. Yep. So, hungry ghosts, they're suffering from ravenous hunger and endless thirst. Because they've got the huge belly, it suggests that they have a huge appetite. And they're said to have eyes like saucers, sort of gazing blankly out into the world out there for anything that they can consume, anything to satisfy that appetite. And when they see something they can eat or drink, they grasp it desperately and they try to cram it into that tiny pinprick mouth. But of course, because of the size of their mouth and their neck, they can never get enough. They can never get enough to satisfy, to fill that huge belly. And even worse than that, it's said that what they do manage to consume turns to fire and excrement in their bellies. That's grim. If they do manage to reach up and pluck one of those tiny fruits, it's said to turn into swords and daggers inside them. And also traditionally, their mouths are said to be so dry that if they do move close to that polluted river, the water recedes from them. It sees them coming and recedes from them. Okay, so this realm, it's a graphic, mythical description of a state of mind of addiction and neurotic craving. So when we're in this state, when we find ourselves in this state of neurotic craving, we're continually seeking relief. We're seeking relief from dissatisfaction, from inner emptiness, from insecurity, loneliness, the feeling of being trapped. The problem is, what makes it neurotic craving is that we look in all the wrong places. We look to things that can't really provide satisfaction. We seek lasting satisfaction from things out there that can't actually really provide it for us. So from food, from drugs, from entertainment, from sex, real or virtual, from people, just from other people. And it's not only that, sometimes the things that we reach for, they positively harm us. It's not that they don't just satisfy us, they might actually harm us, or they might harm other people. So maybe we crave reassurance, affection or approval, and our response might be to have a cigarette or a huge piece of cake. You might sort of tell yourself, well, I'm a good person, I've done a good job today and I deserve cake, I deserve a cigarette. Maybe we crave stability and security, and our response might be to go on a shopping spree, to go to the second floor of John Lewis and bag a hi-fi, or to jump compulsively into a new relationship. Maybe we crave some form of pleasure, and again, compulsively, we just automatically turn to sex. And maybe we just crave for it all to go away for a while, and then we might find ourselves reaching for alcohol and other things. So we might not feel that we suffer from addiction, ourselves, but we can probably all think of our own versions of this basic storyline, this basic mechanism. And it's hardly surprising that we do that. It's hardly surprising that we're constantly seeking relief out there from the sense of inner lack that we experience in here. Because we live in a society that strongly encourages us to do this. We're bombarded all the time with images and messages which tell us that that actually works. Next image. So images like this, which I showed a few of these in my last talk. Happiness is now for sale in the supermarket. It's some chocolate dessert or something. All sorts of messages like that, just reinforcing that we can find happiness and satisfaction from out there, from stuff. We're positively encouraged from all directions to get on the treadmill and consume and to take things from out there to fill the gap that we feel in here. We're subject to powerful forces and interests that are seeking to manipulate our behaviour. Whole industry is based on cultivating a population of hungry ghosts. So we do face an uphill task, and so given that, it's important to have an attitude of kindness and patience towards ourselves. But in the end, ultimately, the best way we can be kind to ourselves is to try to put up a fight and resist this somehow, to see through it, to say, I don't believe you. I don't believe you're going to be the answer to my problems. I don't believe that you are going to make me happy. So the best way to be kind to ourselves is to find ways to get off the treadmill and find some inner contentment, some inner nourishment, some inner satisfaction. So the hungry ghost realm, it sounds pretty bleak, pretty grim, but it is said to have some potential in it. It's actually seen to be, traditionally, you're better off in a hungry ghost realm than in a god realm, which sounds a bit weird. Because it's better to be hungry for something than to delude ourselves into thinking that everything's just fine and that we'll carry on the way we are and everything's just fine. We don't need anything else. Because hunger and thirst can be transformed. It can be transformed into longing, it can be transformed into aspirations for something higher, into desire for spiritual growth. So at least in this realm, we do have some connection with that sense of dissatisfaction that keeps us searching. It keeps us searching for a remedy. So here's a modern archetype of craving. I'm sure you know who it is. It's Gollum from Lord of the Rings, keeping on the Lord of the Rings theme. And he craves one thing. It's quite simple for him. He craves one thing. He craves the ring of power. It's mine. It's my precious. Give it to me. All the way through. And he'll do anything to get it. He'll do anything to get that ring. Deception, betrayal, biting people's fingers off, even murder, sneakiness. Sneaking? Is that what it says? Sneaking? No, you haven't seen it. But the interesting thing in the story is that Frodo, who's the sort of central character, his quest to destroy the ring depends on Gollum. Gollum is the one that drives him on, that finds secret ways through the mountains, that stops him settling for the worldly power that the ring can give him, that keeps him going. So in a way, Frodo realises how much he needs Gollum. And critically, he has compassion for him. He tries to befriend him. Next picture, please. So the Buddha in this realm, as you can see on the left-hand side there, is offers food that can really satisfy, okay? That can address the sense of inner emptiness that those pitiful beings have. So, in a way, in this realm, the question we need to ask ourselves is, well, deep down in my heart of hearts, what is it that I'm really hungry for? What do I know from experience doesn't satisfy that hunger, even though I've tried it many, many times? what in my experience actually does actually give me some real satisfaction. Is it living an ethical life? Is it friendship and community? Is it meditation? Is it being somewhere beautiful and appreciating that beauty? Is it quite simple pleasures? You'll have your own answers to that. But really sort of trying to be a bit more objective about the situation and get an accurate perspective on it. Is this thing, is this object, is this person going to give me lasting satisfaction? If not, what in my experience is going to do that? So very often we can feel trapped and confined by life, and we seek the key out there. So we're looking with our saucer-like eyes, and we're looking out there for the key. So how disappointing it would be to look back at your life and realise how much of it we spent looking in all the wrong places, and how amazing it would be to realise that we had the key all along. So it's important to stay hungry for freedom, but also to try not to be a hungry ghost.
So the beings in the hell realm don't have a particular kind of set of characteristics like, I'm doing the hell realm, sorry, like the hungry ghosts, but you can imagine ourselves being in the hell realm with all kinds of horrible things happening to us. I saw a picture of the hell realm. That beings in there. Is that the one? Yeah. Yeah, all kinds of horrible, nasty things being poked into you and being held upside down with fires and things like that. Not very nice. But we don't have to think of it in those terms. I'm going to talk about what it means to be in the hell realm, why it can be a very good motivator for change, why being in the hell realm is so painful, a bit about how we can work with it, and then what can happen to us when we're with somebody who's in the hell realm. So we know we're in the hell realm when we feel stuck in intense physical and emotional, mental suffering, when we feel very strong anger, resentment, hatred, and perhaps self-hatred is one of the forms of hatred that perhaps we in the West are most familiar with. If we're suffering from depression or mental illness, then we're in the hell realm. Other traditions can see it as an objective place that you're where you're going to be reborn after you've died, an actual state. But I think it's helpful to think of it as a symbol for states of extreme suffering that can be experienced in an ordinary human life, and that we've all been to in short periods in the course of our lives. It's very important to say that Buddhism has no concept of punishment or reward by any kind of God or any kind of cosmic God. It's certainly no concept of hell as being a place that we can go to. Hell happens in the course of our everyday lives. And I've been in and out of hell many times in my life. And that's another thing about hell, that it's not permanent. None of the realms in the Wheel of Life are permanent. But when you can learn a lot from being in the hell realm, but when you're in it, you can feel stuck, and that's a characteristic of being in the hell realm. It's only when you leave the hell realm that you often have any kind of perspective. The great enlightened teacher Padmasambhava said that hell is the teacher of all the Buddhas. And if we do want to learn and grow, we could think about that. I'm just going to quote from Sanghagita, who says, suffering acts as a catalyst. It makes us more aware. People undergoing serious illness and pain or suffering intense distress sometimes have spiritual experiences of a depth and intensity that is extremely rare under more pleasant circumstances. We're more sensitive at such times and thus more susceptible to spiritual influences. And the hell realm can offer an opportunity for spiritual progress. And it's true that there are lots of what's called Buddha seeds in the hell realm. Buddha seeds are a symbol of within the Wheel of Life. for potential, for growth, like ordinary seeds. And they're scattered around all the realms. Again, it's a kind of visual teaching. And there are more Buddha seeds in the hell realm than there are in the God realm. And that teaching, the teaching of the Buddha seeds, helps us to see that to make real progress, the best place to be is actually in the human realm. But even in the hell realm, progress is possible if the suffering we're experiencing motivates us to change. And in my experience, that's when I'm really motivated to practice, when I'm really struggling. Sometimes the only thing to turn to is the Dharma, towards something that can lift us out of the suffering. And if I can see that hatred and aversion, even irritation has led me into the hell realm, then I'm going to try harder to transform it into wisdom and compassion, because I don't want to go back there. And it's said that people who are prone to being in states of strong anger, strong hatred, are the most likely to be able to transform that into wisdom. It's kind of the energy behind the hatred has an energy that wants to cut straight through things, cut straight through the nonsense and get through to the truth. And so it's often said that people who are prone to anger and hatred are actually the ones who are most likely to see the way things really are and to be able to see wisdom. But when we give in to anger and hatred, we create a hell for ourselves. And the world, everybody just becomes irritating. The world is just full of annoying people. And isn't that true? And, she's wearing a stupid hat, or she's got a really annoying face, and there's nothing. and then on another day, they wouldn't at all. It's just that's where you are on that day. And then we become withdrawn and we become isolated because we don't want anything to do with them. And a few years ago, I was in that space. I was feeling very withdrawn and isolated, and I was living abroad. And a very wise friend said to me, "But no wonder you're feeling so unhappy and so miserable. It's because you're feeling cut off. And when you're feeling cut off, you're not aligned with how things really are. Because how things really are is that we are all deeply interconnected. And if you're feeling cut off and withdrawn, then of course you're going to be feeling pain." I was like, oh yeah, that made sense to me. So I'm not sure if it's the traditional view actually, but I experience the hell realm in kind of a drip, that I might be in and out of the hell realm quite a lot, but not necessarily for very long periods. If I'm feeling intense irritation with somebody for a short period, or I'm feeling really left out, that's a big one for me, feeling left out. If I feel left out, then that will be really painful, but it might not last very long, just seconds, minutes. If I'm feeling intense craving, it can be a little bit hungry ghosty, but it feels very intense for me, and that can feel like hell. Or real boredom, when you just want to scream because you're so bored, that kind of intensity. And I work with that as best I can with metta practices and on and off the cushion. That's another talk, I suppose, but there are things you can do trying to connect with metta in those circumstances. So when we feel very strong anger, resentment, hatred, self-hatred, we're in hell. Depression, some forms of mental illness. And it's so that the Buddha in the hell realm offers what's called a balm, a soothing balm. So the Buddha in the hell realm isn't going to give you a lecture on impermanence or try to explain how practicing the Dharma will help in the future. What the Buddha does is offer balm. So what does that actually look like in practice in my life? What does that look like? What could we offer to somebody who is in the hell realm? So if we're not experiencing the hell realm, but we're with somebody who is, what could we do? I think the best thing to offer is friendship. Just being there. The time when I was in hell, just over a year ago, my friend just sat with me, and all she did was listen. It was like magic. She just listened. I was so lucky that I was in a hell realm with her. And I've thought about that since, and being with her was like being on the receiving end of a Buddha offering balm. Being with someone in a hell realm is really tough, actually. I find it very difficult to be with somebody who's in extreme suffering. So this is kind of a list of do's and don'ts for being with somebody who's in a hell realm. Not that I know, but you know, this is what I think is a helpful list. So my thing is that I've got to make it better. You've got to make it better. You've got to do something. I've got to do something that will make it better. I can get really anxious myself and kind of get a bit horrified about being with that kind of suffering. I can actually feel a little bit resentful that I'm being put in such an awkward and painful situation. Strangely, that's what comes up sometimes. That it's down to me to do something. Some people might want to talk about how it is for them, because it triggers something. What that person is saying is triggering something for them, and for me, and I want to talk about what's happened to me. You can get into pity, which is such a horrible thing to be on the receiving end of. It's like, well, I'm all right, I'm up here, I'm okay, and you're a bit pathetic down there, and you're not me, and I'm up here all strong and capable, and poor you're in the hell realm down there, and you're a bit useless. It's just pity is like, oh, poor thing. That's not very nice to be on the receiving end of. You might get yourself into a big flap. That you've got to get a quick solution to the problem of your friend. Again, that cuts you off from them. You are a problem, and I can fix you. You've gone a bit wrong, and I can make you better if you just do this. If you do X, Y, Z, this is what you need to do, and you'll be better. And the other thing is that I can sometimes think it's your own fault. You got through this. You got into this state because it's your own fault, or some kind of karmic thing that it's karma that has got somebody in the hell realm to where they are, and that's wrong. The Buddha said very clearly, whoever says it's only karma that oppresses beings is wrong. So if we go down that road, we're going to cut ourselves off from the person, and that's not going to help at all. All these responses to being with somebody who's in the hell realm have me at the centre, not them at the centre. And that time I was in hell, this person just sat with me, and she was just there. She was a grounded presence, and she didn't say very much. Nothing I said was shocking or upsetting. She just heard it all and checked out with me things that she wasn't sure of, and she got herself out of the way. And so that is the balm, I think, that is described. One of the ways that you can be a balm for somebody who is suffering in the hell realm. So just related to the karma thing, things do happen to us that we have no control over. There's lots of different sets of conditions happening, and it's not always karma. It might be, it could well be karma, but it might not be, and we can't assume that, and it's not helpful to think of it in that way anyway. So another balm can be the presence of the Buddha himself. And we can call on the Buddha. You can sometimes think that we don't do prayer. Well, prayer is a strong word. But we can call on the Buddha in times of when we think we're in the hell realm. There are lots of pictures of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around the Buddhist Centre you might connect with. And one way to connect with a Buddha or a Bodhisattva is to chant a mantra. And a mantra is a really good balm for when we're in the hell realm. If you learn one and learn it off by heart and chant it, then that can really help. And the purpose of the mantra is to protect the mind. And you can find that really, really helps. It just kind of, it's like magic. It can help. It's worth trying. So it's kind of reaching out to something. Reaching out is a way of connecting. And the worst thing about being in a hell realm is that you feel so cut off. So these balms are ways to reach out. and there are ways for us to reach in. So we can be the reacher in, and we can be the reacher out. What's that?